On this episode of TLC Connections, G.T. Freeman sits down with Jennifer Anderson, Executive Director of Trellis for Tomorrow. Jennifer shares how her career evolved from corporate finance and technology into leading community-based sustainability work focused on food access and health equity. Together, GT and Jennifer explore how community gardens create access to fresh food, build connection, and provide meaningful learning experiences for young people and communities. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Surviving the cold weather?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I like the Four Seasons. That's what's nice about being in Pennsylvania, in my opinion. You know, I grew up in the DC area, so I'm used to the change every few months. It's nice.
Grew up in DC, like born and raised?
Yeah, like outside of DC, Bethesda, Potomac area. So not.
What was that
right
like?
It was a great place to grow up, actually. I loved the diversity. I grew up in a very diverse community. A lot of sort of foreign nationals in the area. My school system was very diverse, so I just had exposure to a lot as a young person. And you know, it's a very transient place, so I don't know, just a lot of different people kind of came in and out of my life, and it was I was fortunate to have a very lovely community that we grew up in. So yeah, very fond memories.
And how long were you there?
I was there until I graduated from college, when I was recruited to come work in Philly. So, and I'd never been to Philadelphia before, so that was like a big deal. Okay,
we'll get to Philly in just a minute. So, but I want to camp out in DC for a while.
Yeah.
So, there for a while, as you reflect back on that time, 2 or 3 life lessons that you learned there that you've taken with you?
That's interesting. Okay, I would say that in terms of maybe anything that translates to kind of today's world in my life, I was a swimmer growing up. So that was the center of my world, was swimming. And in particularly in the summer, our community that I mentioned being lovely was very much centered on a sort of a community pool that was in the physical center of the community. And I would be there, you know, beginning of the day to the end of the day. And so I got my first work experiences there. I started working at age 13. And I realized that I loved to work. I really enjoy working. So that was one thing. 2
Do you think that was nature or nurture? I mean,
I think it was
where'd you
nature.
get that work ethic from?
I did to some degree my family, but my father in particular was, pretty hardworking business type.
So it was modeled for you as well.
It was modeled, but I also just think I enjoy feeling purposeful.
Yeah.
I enjoy feeling like I'm doing something that's having an impact on somebody somewhere, and that I get up in the morning and I have a reason to get up and go do something.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I was at a young age put into a position of coaching, and I say young age, I'm talking like 18, of coaching a swim team of 150 kids, which at 18 is a stretch.
Right.
But we had lost our swim coach, and they said, hey, we think you could do this. Would you do this? And I said yes, not really knowing what that meant exactly. And it sort of started a theme in my life of being kind of, I wouldn't say pushed into or encouraged into leadership positions that I didn't really always feel like I was ready for. And I think in that case, I definitely wasn't ready for it. And it went okay, but it was just sort of a lesson mentally to me to be a little bit more aware of what you're saying yes to and if you're really ready for it.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 things that come. I think the third thing for me that maybe came out of those years was recognition. I mentioned diversity before, recognition that diversity of people and experiences in my life was something that was extremely necessary. And when I found myself in the future in places that didn't have that, I would feel sort of stifled and, just a little bit uninspired maybe.
Yeah.
And so I look for that in a lot of things that I do.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you had a passion for swimming. What else were your passions, I guess, in that time?
my mother was an artist,
Okay.
so I always sort of had a more of a like a fine arts inclination. I
Okay.
was drawn to that, and that was a little bit more of my creative outlet
Okay.
as a young person. So there was the swimming side of things, there was the work side of things, and there was
Yeah.
the little bit of art side of things. But I think for me, I was a very um, sort of spontaneous and kind of fly by the seat of your pants
Mhm.
young person.
Okay.
And I feel like in some ways I was a late bloomer, but I don't know that everybody would agree with that. But I feel that. And so
Mhm.
I think I sort of just wanted to live, I
Yeah.
wanted to just live life and experience what I could. I was very social, very
Mm.
social person. So friends were important,
Mhm.
hanging out, being with people was really important. So I think that was about all I had room for,
Yeah.
you know.
And so you said you went to school there also locally?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Talk about
Public
that experience.
public school. I went to Walt Whitman High School, which is in Bethesda area, and at the time, I think I remember hearing it was like ranked in the top 10 public high schools in the
Mm.
country. So extremely strong academically, but also again very very diverse socioeconomically, racially, religiously, everything. So it was a. I don't know that I took
Mm.
advantage as much as I could have of all that was offered as a student in that school, but it was a great education. It was a great public school education.
In
And
college?
college, I ended up going to Bucknell University
Mhm.
out at Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. So I was an economics and Japanese double major at Bucknell.
Okay. A lot to unpack there. I got to get to economics and Japanese for just a second. But why not something local? Were you looking to get out of DC, even though you love DC, or not DC, but that
Yeah,
that area?
Yeah.
And was that just a little bit wanting to get away from like the
Yeah,
nest?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Not in any kind of like a, oh, I can't wait to get out of here kind of way. But,
Right.
as I said, I was a bit of an adventurous soul,
Right.
and my family traveled a good bit, not a ton, but enough.
Okay.
So
Was one of those trips to Japan?
no, no.
Okay.
So I graduated from high school in 1990, and
Okay.
if you remember what was going on in 1990, Japan was in the economic spotlight, right?
Right.
So I had always loved languages. I had taken I had taken Spanish throughout, um, pretty much since I guess the beginning of middle school. So
Right.
I had a little bit of Spanish, but I wanted to do something different in college, and I
Mm.
thought, well, what goes with economics? And Japanese
Okay.
seemed to be an interesting way to go. So it served me very, very well.
Right.
It was a super interesting language to study and made for an incredible abroad experience.
Yeah. Now you mentioned a little earlier that you had a creative arts side.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think of economics in Japanese, I don't think arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. I am very proud of the fact that I think I have a lot of each of my parents in me. So the fact that my mother was very artistic, and she was also a therapist later on in life. So she was a fine arts major. They both went to Carnegie Mellon, and she was a fine arts major, and so she sort of really leaned into that whole art side. That was her profession for many, many years, and she's done art her whole life. And then she went back to school in her 40s and got her master's in social work. So she sort of
Okay.
delved into that more of the humanities and
Okay.
humanistic side. And then my father was, solid businessman, Booz Allen Hamilton executive for a couple of decades, very, very much leaned into that side. And so I feel like I was very fortunate that I inherited a good bit from each of them. So I can kind of
Yeah.
play both sides of that.
That's interesting. I was just I've known you for a while, but I looked
Mm.
at your LinkedIn profile just to remind
Mm.
me of your like background. And you do see that blend of like business,
Mhm.
like in finance, tech,
Mhm.
software development.
Mhm.
But then you see a lot of work in nonprofit,
Environmental
sustainability. Right,
sustainability
exactly.
and
So that's fascinating. Yeah. So describe a little bit about that, the tension between, or is there even tension between those two, or do they complement one another?
Oh, they definitely complement one
Yeah.
another. And I think it's the way the world is going. I really truly believe that. I mean, you may not see it all the time everywhere all at once, but I think that this sort of integration of our heart and our mind and
Yeah.
um using kind of all aspects of our person at
Mhm.
work is is the way that we need to go, and also I think we are going as society. But for me personally, I really enjoy both sides of that, and I think I would struggle if I had to disassociate from one or the other.
Yeah.
I find business to be highly creative. That's one of the things I love about it, especially in
Mm.
the spaces that I've been fortunate to be involved in. They've almost all been entrepreneurial. So I've been afforded a lot of opportunity to create and build and problem solve. I know you're the same way, so you get
Mm.
it. It's fun,
Yeah.
and I like doing it in spaces with people that have sort of similar values about caring for people and the planet and
Yeah.
the world around you. When I started, not to preempt any questions that you might have, but when I started at SEI out of undergrad, I was an economics major. So what do you really do with that? I wasn't going to go into academia. That was definitely not what I was
Right.
interested in. But I just had taken economics because I loved it. And I still think it's a phenomenal major. Just a little plug for anybody who's looking for a
Mhm.
major. It just
Right.
has so much to offer because you're looking at finance and psychology and history and systems thinking, and it's just a fantastic experience. And so with that, I moved into financial services, which sort of was, I guess, tangentially appropriate. Although what's really funny about that, GT, is that when I started at SEI in 1994, I was hired as a part of their associate program, which was 30 or so young people just
Mhm.
graduated, excuse me, all starting together. And I had a phenomenal experience. It's an exceptional company.
Mhm.
And the thing about SEI is that even though I wasn't an entrepreneur technically, it's a very entrepreneurial company in a lot of ways. And so I was allowed to move around and do a lot of different things. And the interesting thing about that is that when I got to where I thought I wanted to be within the organization, which was I was 28 years old. I was traveling. I spent about 50% of my time outside of the US. I was
Mm.
spending, at that time, most of my time in South America and Central America, in Mexico, Chile, and Argentina, helping to market the institutional products that SEI had for businesses. And but I'd also been traveling in South Africa and Asia, and just pretty amazing job for 28. Um,
Did you eventually make it to Japan?
I did not. I
There's some
did not.
irony
They were
there.
not. There is irony there. There is absolutely irony there. I did spend some time in Korea, but not in Japan.
Yeah.
Other than flying through Narita,
Right.
but so I thought, oh, this is great. I'm
Mhm.
making a good living. I'm traveling all over the world. There's really interesting people, so on and so
Right.
forth. But it wasn't feeding my soul.
Mm.
I just couldn't get excited about institutional investment products. I just couldn't get
Yeah.
excited about them. And
Did you have an idea at that point that environmental sustainability and some of the work you do today would feed your soul? Did you know what?
no,
You didn't know what that was yet?
no. So I
Okay.
got to that point and I said, okay, I know I need to make a change. I don't know what that is. Um, but I figured probably going back to school at that point was a good idea if I could figure out what that sort of stepping stone might be into something. And I knew I wanted to do something more humanistic. I was very interested in health
Mm.
and nutrition. Um, I felt like that was an area, but I didn't really want to I didn't want to go. I certainly had thought about like the medical school route, PA. I looked at maybe going the PA route. And then I found public health. And I thought, this is kind of interesting, back to your point about marrying sort of the business side and the more human side, or more heart-centered side. What I liked about public health was that it was systems thinking,
Mhm.
right? So it connected to econ.
Right.
It was about the health of populations. So you have the opportunity to have a very big impact with a program or an initiative or something like that that could really affect the health of many, many people. And I felt like I could apply my business skills and acumen to a health related problem,
Mhm.
and that was just a nice synergy around the things that I had
Was
done.
part of the reason for going back to school was to because it wasn't, as you said, to use your words, it wasn't feeding your soul what you were doing at that time.
Mhm.
Were you looking at school as like an opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, I was, 8, 10 years older than I was when I had graduated from undergrad. And um, I think I was also, if I think about it, GT, I think I was also looking for something that was broad enough that I could find something that I
Mm.
was interested in. Like, not
Yeah.
that I had this really specific
Right.
path in mind, like, oh, I want to do, I want to work for a public health department, or oh, I want to do this or that. No, it wasn't that. It was really just sort of like, this is intriguing.
Yeah.
And I think I could find something here that
Yeah.
could be of interest.
Let's jump to what you do today.
Yeah.
Talk about Trellis for Tomorrow.
Okay.
'Cause
So
I told you earlier, and
you're going to jump around.
I want to jump around a little bit.
Okay,
So
let's
let's
jump
jump to
around.
the end, and we'll jump back to the
Let's
middle.
jump to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Trellis for Tomorrow, it's a nonprofit.
Right.
It's been around for a couple of decades.
Right.
I became the first non-founder ED in 2019. And Trellis is about community sustainability at the sort of biggest level. That's the umbrella. And the area that we work in to help support community sustainability are really about empowering people to grow as much food as they can in as many spaces as they can, particularly in urban
Mhm.
and quasi-urban environments.
Right.
The philosophy being that when you introduce that, and of course this used to be the norm, right? This used to back in the early part of the 1900s, like and around the wartime and everything. This is what people did. People
Right.
had gardens.
Right.
But in addition to just saying, hey, people, it would be great if people had more gardens and supporting that, it's really about how do we grow food in community with one another and for the benefit of one another. Because in today's world, as you well know, many communities, especially in lower income urban scenarios, don't have access to fresh produce. And they
Right.
certainly don't have access to organic fresh produce that's just harvested within the last couple of days.
Yeah.
So that is the healthiest, most nutrient dense option being provided to individuals that often have the highest or most negative health outcomes or highest health disparities.
Yeah.
So that's really health equity. So creating opportunities for people to grow food not only obviously gives them access to healthy food, but it also creates opportunities for them to be in community with one another and connect to one another. It creates opportunities for beautification, for cleaner air, for cleaner water, to use green spaces or spaces that maybe not even green for something that feels more abundant and vibrant. So there are so many layers of benefit. And then on top of that, the other thing that Trellis does is that we try to layer in education throughout. And it's not just education about how to grow food. That is a significant part of it. But it's also sort of life and life preparedness skills, particularly for young people,
Yeah.
aged 12 to 26.
And how long have you been at Trellis now?
A little over 7 years.
7 years. Over those 7 years, was there any particular moment today or program that you launched that you're most proud of?
I would say that one of the things that I'm very proud of personally is how we navigated and responded to COVID.
Okay.
And I say that because it was obviously not predicted. But when I started I really started at the end of 2018 was the beginning of my work there. And I spent almost the entire year of 2019 bringing the organization up to what I think is sort of modern day operations. And a lot of that involved getting us onto cloud-based servers, getting the whole team laptops,
Yeah.
changing all of our technology infrastructure, our banking infrastructure, our credit card infrastructure, like everything. Literally, we changed everything. And we started using Slack. We started using Asana. So all of these kind of, technology-based programs to help the organization run more efficiently and more effectively,
Right.
which there was some grumbling about. And it was not a small undertaking. And lo and behold, March of 2020 hit, and we were we could hit the ground running. We were
Wow.
in a phenomenal position. And again, that's just what I knew how to do.
Right.
I wasn't predicting anything. It just was the way that I wanted to organize and operate. So that was very positive. But then on top of that, and I don't know whether or not I would credit myself
Mhm.
necessarily for this, but when I came into Trellis, there was a lot of programs, and there had been a little bit of an understandable. It happens. It's so easy to have this happen, but a little bit of kind of mission creep, or at
Mhm.
least dispersion, I'll say, of effort
Yep.
across kind of multiple iterations of programs. So I
Right.
spent a lot of time that first year sort of narrowing it down to the top 3 to 5 things that I felt like had the most legs, were really the most effective, that we had the best resources to deploy against in terms of programmatic success. And it turns out that those things were able, for the most part, to continue to happen and were high priority programs for that time that we were in. And what I mean by that specifically is we were growing food in
Mm.
communities where people could
Right.
access it. And we were doing that outside. So you didn't have to be inside. You could be outside and meet up in the garden. And even if you're wearing
Right.
masks or you're doing whatever, we could still get people into the garden. And young people were locked at home and not able to access social interaction at school, but they could do it in the garden.
Right.
So we could keep going with our programming. And not only could we keep going, we actually gained resources
Wow.
because there was interest. So
Wow.
that's not to say that there weren't a lot of challenges with that, with
Yeah.
navigating that time. For example, we have a cohort of about 1,500 volunteers that help manage our Food for All partner gardens,
Mhm.
and many of those were not coming to work if they was at a corporation, or even at
Right.
organizations where their programming wasn't happening. So we had to take on a lot more. So there was a lot of challenges about it, but relative to other organizations, I feel like we were in
Yeah.
absolutely the right position at the right time with the right set of resources to deliver on what was needed for the community.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Similarly, um, other than COVID, over these past 7 years, some of your biggest challenges, other than COVID, because I know that was a challenge, but that was your example of a very positive experience
Mhm.
in a very challenging
Mhm.
environment. But anything come to mind?
I would say I think the biggest challenge is building a culture
Mm.
and managing people
Mm.
to have a good experience and feel good about the work that they do.
Yeah.
I think that, the nonprofit space, and I think in particular, to some degree, I think the space that Trellis operates in, sort of that straddling of education, youth, and ag,
Yeah.
we attract a very diverse and sort of unusual, unique set of people
Yeah.
to us as potential employees, and trying to create an experience that kind of keeps everybody happy and also
Yeah.
keeps everything moving the way that it needs to move, and manage as a nonprofit a very limited set of resources in a very
Yeah.
intentional way, is really challenging.
Well, you probably drew on your experience from, again, DC. You mentioned how diverse it
Hmm.
is, and
Hmm.
managing a large organization,
Yeah.
you're going to have a very diverse group
Yeah.
of team members you're working with.
Yeah. So I think if I had underestimated anything about the difficulty of growth, I would say growing a team of people that are all aligned and moving in the same direction with relatively the same amount of energy and enthusiasm is,
Yeah. The challenges of leadership is what you're talking about.
yeah.
What would you say the main challenges are, just in general, not necessarily at Trellis, but
Hmm. Well, I think in today's world, I think there's the generational challenges are pretty significant,
yeah,
and I think they're like any challenge. There's huge opportunities. I think the younger generations that are coming into the workforce have important values that they're bringing to the workspace, that they want to see a different culture than maybe what our Gen X and to
yeah,
some degree baby boomer culture has offered. and how we
Yeah.
were sort of molded as employees. And I think that's really important. I think we need
Mhm.
to have more balance, and I think we need to have more conversations about authenticity and humanity at work and all of those things. At the same time, I think that that same generation has struggled with conflict. They struggle with communication. My MO, if I'm having a confusing email exchange with
Mhm.
somebody, or I think there might be something off, I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
GT, let's talk this out, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? And we have a great conversation, and we end up light years ahead of where we are, hopefully, because we've been able to have a chat.
Right.
That is not the instinct of most of the younger generations, and they get very uncomfortable with those direct conversations. In my experience, not everybody,
Mhm.
but a lot. And I think a lot of that's a product of social media and the ability to sort of craft every message.
Mhm.
Some of it is, if you listen to Simon Sinek or others, it's also a factor of, I think, how they were raised.
Yeah.
And so one of the challenges that we've had is trying to create an environment where people feel like they can say what they want to say, be authentic about what's not working for them early enough so that there's an opportunity to address that
Mm.
and really work through it. Um, and when that doesn't happen, it can blow up in ways that are kind of surprising and shocking and kind of like, well, that came out of left field,
Yeah.
in ways that really create a lot of disruption in the organization.
Yeah.
And so that's been, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges.
In those times of
Mm,
in those challenging times, is there a particular place you go to like
mm,
seek wisdom? Do you go to your own experiences? Do you phone a friend?
mm.
Where do you
Hmm.
go?
All of the above.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably many of us in our lives, we have the people that we go to just be like, and just offload and get the yes, it sucks. I totally get that, and I agree.
Right.
So my sister is one of those for me,
Yeah.
because she also runs a business and she gets it, and so we tend
Yeah.
to have those sort of like
Older or younger?
older, 6 years older.
Yeah. Okay.
We have those like pull our hair out kind of conversations, and that's can be very cathartic.
Yeah.
But I am very much a person who will admit when I don't feel like I have the experience or the background to address something effectively. And so when that happens, I tend to try to find the experts. I have a pretty good network.
Mhm.
So that serves me well. I can usually find somebody
Mhm.
that has some experience in the area that I'm struggling, and I'll try to really like, what do I do in this situation?
Right.
Um, and so I have a few that I go to around kind of management, leadership issues and questions. And then there's definitely a very sort of personal, spiritual kind of centering place that I go to as well to, usually in nature, but also just kind of certain spiritual resources that I tap into that help me to recognize and put some perspective around what's going on,
Yeah.
um, and the core of that is very much around just, I really do believe that everything that happens is a lesson.
Mm.
And um, it's all about kind of our personal and collective evolution. And it
Right.
may be painful and it may stink in the moment.
Right.
But I truly believe that if I can find the lesson, or at least have some idea what the lesson is, that it really
Yeah.
does help me.
Yeah. It's the journey, not the destination. So you're
Absolutely.
learning along the way. Um, I'm jumping around now. You
No,
mentioned
jump, jump.
1,500 staff with all your gardens. How many gardens are out there under the Trellis
So,
umbrella?
if you include all of our programs, GT, I think we're at like 35
Okay.
gardens. And then if you add our grow towers, we have 20 some grow towers in different
Yeah.
locations as well.
So one of those gardens is right outside
Right
the building
here.
here.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. What is that entails, starting a
Hmm.
garden,
Hmm.
And talk about the garden towers as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Absolutely. So, the Food for All program, which you all are wonderful partners of, is an interesting opportunity to leverage resources within the community that exist for the benefit of growing and distributing food. So the way that it works is we partner with organizations that have land and also have some people power.
Right.
Doesn't have to be corporate, doesn't have to be any particular type. We have municipal, faith-based, educational, corporate, all kinds of organizations that partner with us in the Food for All program. And as I said, the prerequisite is some land, an interest in
How much land?
It just depends. I think the smallest that we do at this point is 6 raised beds. So I don't know what that is off the top of my head in terms of square footage, but
that's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the size of this room is
Right.
probably about the small. Not that
Right.
everybody can see that, but probably about the smallest that it would be. But up to like a full acre, I mean, it can be the equivalent of a small farm, like we have at the Salvation Army Croc Center in Philly. So it can be any real size. Need to have access to water, obviously, and the people power is important because. Again, and we say this a lot, it's not just about growing food, it's about growing community. Our goal is to try to get as many people out and involved in that garden. And Trellis is what I like to say is the backbone. So we will help design, build, install the garden to the specifications that make sense for your organization. We help you plan the crops for 9 months of growing, so 3 growing seasons. We provide on-site education and engagement sessions with the people that are going to be supporting the garden. We help you recruit them. We help you with communications for those people. And we will troubleshoot as things come up, issues with your irrigation system or particular pests or things like that, and we'll help navigate that. So there's a range of services that we provide to ensure that the kind of heavy lifting is taken care of so that you guys can really just focus on the fun-ish stuff, the weeding, the harvesting. And then it is that organization's responsibility and we'll connect you with one of 50 food banks and pantries in the area to get that food into the community. And so that you all are responsible for donating what is grown in the garden. At least 50%, but it's typically more like 95%. So this past year, I think the Food for All program in total grew 53,000 pounds. And donated of organic produce across 4 counties.
Yeah. Well, we're doing something right in this we have here on our property. I was driving by, I think it was probably around springtime. My wife was with me. We drove by the garden, and I wanted to show her. Anyway, there's some huge things. I don't know what it was. Some of them were yellow, some of them were green. But they were huge.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife saying, "This is the largest XYZ
Such
zucchini,
squash, whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. It was the largest. It didn't
Right.
look pretty big. Anyway, we just took it. So I'm not sure we're allowed to. But
No,
we did.
you absolutely
Okay.
are.
All
That's
right.
actually something that we are trying to encourage more of.
Right.
A lot of the companies that we work with or organizations are like, oh, we want it all to go to the community. But part of that is the people that are, let them take it home.
Yeah. And
It's great. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, it was a great yeah. So is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you wanted to talk about?
I don't know. I think can I ask you a question?
Yeah, you can ask me a question.
I'm curious. So you mentioned, that the young people enjoy the garden.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about if that has inspired any sort of other conversations within TLC about experiential programming and kind of different things that you can do with the young people here.
Yeah, experiential learning and problem-based learning has always been kind of part of our curriculum. We've always we have projects in our school that are cross-disciplinary. So one project might include like a science and math component in terms of like calculating like the buoyancy of a boat or something, and then it's integrated with like the art class or actually like building out the boat, and then you're going outside and then testing it to make sure it works. So we try to do that. So the garden idea fit in very nicely with kind of what we already do.
Yeah.
And we're trying to determine what do we do with uh, advancing technology, like with AI, for example, and VR and augmented reality. How do we integrate that? But at the same time, we want them outside as well. But they need to have those technology skills to survive.
Yep.
And well, time will tell if AI replaces all of our jobs or not. So finding that right balance.
Yeah. 100%.
Is the challenge. My youngest is out in LA and she's an aspiring artist. She is more tactile, more she loves just taking a stylus and just drawing on her iPad.
Yeah.
And the idea that AI can basically do it for you is like, it's scary on one hand, but that seems to be where it's going. So how do you provide wisdom and guidance to someone who the technology is going to probably disrupt their entire industry, but she has such a passion for what she does, and the challenges of parenting, and then that same challenge is for educators.
Yeah.
How do we educate our
absolutely.
kids? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, I had and this is one thing I'll just say, is that I think that the future of education is such an interesting question. And I don't mean necessarily the more pragmatic question of how we fund it or, this or that or the other thing. But I was recently previewing a software system. It's basically to support the Work Ready PA program requirements that Governor Wolf put in place 6 years ago or so. That every student within Pennsylvania needs to start with career and workforce readiness planning at grade 1. Right. So every single year they have certain requirements that they need to go through. And the premise behind that is that if you're thinking about your career planning, your whole education, whether you decide to go to college or you don't decide to go to college, you have some idea of what might make sense for you based on your personality, your interests, your geography, what's available, where career, opportunities are opening up, what's happening. So it integrates all of those things, which I think, by the way, is brilliant. Because I do think that it's really changing for young people. And, there are so many things available in the world that were not available as job opportunities when you and I were graduating from college or high school. And it's changing very rapidly. So to have that roadmap and be able to build that roadmap a little bit and get to that point where you might have a little bit of a better idea of what would be a good fit for you, to me is such a brilliant, and we're looking to potentially incorporate that into some of the work that we're doing as well. But those experiences that we can create for young people to test out certain things and shadow certain areas and sort of get a feel for something that they might think is a possibility, I think is going to be really important because somebody was telling me recently they were listening to a podcast with Elon Musk and some other people talking about education, and they all said, we can't see a reason why almost anybody would go to college. Right. Like, what's the value? Is that really what makes sense? And so I think that it's obviously an area for significant reinvention, and probably over the next few decades will really change dramatically.
Yeah, and that's what progress and technology forces us to do, right? And we can't bury our heads in the sand. We got to embrace it, but make sure also that as we transition into whatever the new thing is, that we don't lose something in the process. It's like, So,
agreed.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank
I've enjoyed this, and we'll do it again for sure.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me to have the conversation, and it's really neat that you're doing this.
And to learn more about Trellis, you would go where? The website?
www.trellis4tomorrow.org.
Trellis4tomorrow.org.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, GT.
TLC Connections is supported in part by the Lincoln Center for Family and Youth. Through education, counseling, coaching, and consulting, we empower people to make positive choices, meaningful connections, and transformational change. To learn more, visit thelincolncenter.com.